Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
You will appear with us here on Apex Racing TV. So as you can see, we have reached week 12 of 2024 season 3, and we are here at the Green Hell. What a finale. What a great car track combination. This track opened in 1927 in the shadow of Nürburgring Castle in the Eifel Mountains of Germany. Last held an F1 race here in 1977. Current host, of course, to DTM and the 24 Hours of Nürburgring. We are in industry farting configuration today. It is almost 21 clicks, almost 13 miles, and a mere 154 corners. And if you listen carefully to my partner Ron Mons, he is going to be naming those throughout the race in the correct German pronunciation, so you have that to look forward to. The race lap record of this configuration is a 6:25.9, set by Stefan Beloff in a Porsche 956 all the way back in 1983. That is a Group C race car, and I want you to remember that number of 625, because these radicals are going to come shockingly close to that number. So here we are, Ron. back to the Nordschleife as we sometimes do for a season finale here in the Radicals. I think it is a fantastic car track combination. Really takes advantage of the high speed downforce that these cars can generate, takes advantage of the power, and maybe the only place on that long back straightaway where these things actually hit terminal velocity in 6th gear. So they are cooking at the end of every lap. But what are you looking for out of these drivers today?
Well, I am looking for these drivers to have a whole lot of fun, of course, bringing this season to a close at the biggest and best racetrack of them all. I love this track, harkening my mind back many, many moons ago, back when I used to play Forza Motorsports 4 as an elementary school student. I just loved driving around this track in all sorts of cars. I have loved it ever since, love it in iRacing, love it in Project Cars, love it in Forza Motorsports 4, even though I haven't touched that game in many, many moons, but this track is absolutely fantastic, and in these Radical SR10s, it is an absolute hoot, a fantastic track to bring this season to a close. I remember my first ever Radical broadcast, and my first broadcast of any kind way back in March of 2023, being with these cars at this track. I was a newcomer, I had no idea what I was doing back then, but it was really trial by fire for me with these cars around this track. They put on some pretty good finishes as well. We have seen some barn burner of some final laps in the past, and I feel like today with this race it is going to be no different, with that long run going down the straightaway heading into the final few corners on the 4th and final lap of this race. We are going to be in for a fantastic finish, a fantastic race as well, and I think, JR, we're about to get the starting grid for this race in just a couple of moments time.
Yeah, and you really summed up the nature of some of these races as we're about to get that grid up for you. We'll review that with you momentarily, and of course, folks, if you're familiar with how iRacing handles this course, qualifying is separate, so there will be no qualifying session attached to the race. People get to qualify during the week and set a qualifying time for the week, and there is that starting grid, so I'll go ahead and go through it with you now. Well-known Radical alien Philip Vandenherk, we haven't seen him around for a while, but he snatched the pole at 6:19.985. Remember that Stefan Beloff lap that I told you about? So he has beaten that incredibly. We have Matheson there in P2, won last week. John McCutcheon next to Andreas Friedrich in the next row. Row 3 will be Barry next to Samir Kadura. Heinz Braun will be next to Hoeniger in 7 and 8. Kim Andre Bjorklund next to Kjetil Larsen in 9 and 10. Sauli Reitinen will be next to Leah Anderson, who is a pretty popular streamer. It's good to see her out here in 11 and 12. And we'll scroll that for you. In the next row, we'll have Gabriel Berger next to Christopher Carlson. Gonzaga next to Hauge. Kyriakopoulos, Adrian, and Maka. And look at those lights sneak up on me. We are underway. No traction control. Ice cold tires. It looks like Vandenherk is going to get away clean. And Matheson is off already. Oh, and a bad kerfuffle right at the beginning. Normally don't see this kind of nonsense in the top split, but Ron, that is not the start that these drivers were looking for. 4 laps in the Nürburgring and a big crash in turn 1.
Oh yeah, a big schmozzle heading into turn number 1. Not ideal for many of these drivers, mainly McCutcheon and Anderson, who've already dropped out of this race. They are done for. I think we have some more replays after a big crash heading out of the corner. I'm not sure who that was in the back of shot that may. Yeah, that was Marco Hoeniger who's come around. That was coming out of... I will not attempt to try and pronounce that corner that he spun out of. JR, thank you very much for putting me on the spot, by the way. My German ancestors are going to be rolling in their graves if I try and pronounce any of the corners around this wonderful racetrack. But a lot of drivers running into issues so far. Not going to be the first time we've seen some drivers make some mistakes in this challenging race. Definitely won't be the last either.
Yeah, and a terrible start run for our front runners. The pole sitter, Bendit, is now down 12 positions. Did not take the toe, still rolling, but John McCutcheon was way up there in the front. Andreas Friedrich way up there in the front. Looks like McCutcheon has taken a toe along with Leah Anderson. So we're going to get a quick look here at what happened, but we got our camera focused on McCutcheon right now. He may be, oh yeah, he had some help there as the cars tried to go 3 wide through that very difficult. That is a slow left-hand corner heading down the hill there. You've got to be very patient to get on the throttle, and they tried to stuff 3 cars down there simultaneously, and you see the result. Our pole sitter and some of our fastest drivers are out, and that is going to leave Philip Vandenherk already with a 4-second lead, is going to get a track day out of this one, Ron.
Oh yeah, he is beginning to pull away already. That is a dominating lead. However, you want to try and maintain a lead like that. We've seen in the past with these Radical SR10 races here on Apex Racing TV that if a driver enters that final flat out blast with a gap under 2 seconds, that gap will pretty much crater between the start of that back straightaway and the end of that back straightaway. So having that 4-second gap is very encouraging for Philip Vandenherk. He really needs to try and put his nose to the grindstone and extend that gap. Marco Honegger, who I believe may have been the driver that was spinning not terribly long ago, he's currently running in second, so I'm not entirely sure if I exactly had that driver correct. I'm not sure who that was spinning at the very beginning of the race. It's been so hectic thus far. There's also some smoke there. I was worried that our leader Philip Vandenherk had spun, but some very strange things going on here at the Nordschleife. I feel like this race start has been so chaotic. My graphics and everything are having a slight little panic attack. I think I may have some sort of technical issue to try and get sorted out here, JR. But it shows you that these races are always quite chaotic at the start, and we just saw that got put on full display just a couple of moments ago.
Yeah, and a real nice train here, Ron, forming up front. It's going to be Björklund from Honegger, from Larson, from Kadura, from Barry, from Reitman, and the gap covering all those cars between 2 and 3 seconds. So we're going to have a nice train going here. We're getting through the back part of the course now. We're going to be on that long back straightaway here before too much longer, and that's when these drivers are going to have to make some decisions. Do you want to hang back and bide your time and wait for the last lap, or do you want to go ahead and take advantage of the slipstream and make that pass at the end of the back straight, knowing that the next time around, if you're not able to stretch that gap beyond the draft distance, which I'm going to say is probably 0.7 or 0.8, if you can stretch the gap beyond that, you could be safe, but if you can't, you're absolutely a sitting duck on the next lap. So watch Vandenherk, he's driving away with a 5-second gap, but yeah, Björklund, Honegger, Larson, Kadura, Barry, and Reitman all packed together there. Barry just having put a move on Reitman, and he's going to want to close that gap ahead of him to Kadura. It's about 1.2 currently, and he is going to want to catch that train or he's going to be late for work.
Yeah, you really want to try and force the issue in the opening stages of this race. These drivers feeling even more pressure than they have before. I think it's a matter of when, not if, that these drivers start to try and be even more aggressive than they have been thus far in this race. Outside the leader of Philip Vandenherk, the field is still fairly close, with Björklund running in P2, Honegger in third, Larson in fourth, and Kadura in P5. Currently, the top 7 all separated by less than 10 seconds. Really, if you discount Herc in the lead of this race, between P2 and P7, it's only about 4 seconds, so incredibly close at the north end of this field. These drivers, it's a track where a lot of mistakes can be made, but despite that, you still see a lot of drivers just sending it on each other.
Yeah, and some great camera work here, even at speeds well over 100 miles an hour. You saw those radicals 4 wheels off the ground there in one of the famous sections of the Nordschleife here. And here we are riding along with Kadura, looking ahead at Larson and Honegger. And this corner right here, Ron, you've got to nail this one. This is critical corner to get a good launch onto that back straight, and we're going to see what happens down at the end here. The slipstream in these radicals, massive, and maybe we can get Sam at some point to put up the top speed for us, but these radicals are going to hit terminal velocity on this long straightaway, and here we got 3 lined up side by side. Well, it looked like it was going to be a potential 3-car entry into that tight right-hander at the end of the straight, but they're shuffling, and we'll have to hold our breath that they all get through this final set of corners to start the next lap.
Yeah, these drivers are definitely starting to force the issue here, and it goes back to the point that we've mentioned a lot throughout this broadcast. These races can be pretty much 150-mile-an-hour games of leapfrog, especially going down that long straightaway. We just saw round number 1 of that, only 4 laps around this racetrack for this race, so we got 4 rounds of that high-speed leapfrog, and that was just the first case of it there, but these drivers are going to get even more aggressive on the second swing by. I gotta imagine that they're going to be playing with fire between now and the end of this race. These drivers can be aggressive, and a lot of these drivers know each other as well. From the time that I've been covering this series for, at this point, a year and a half, lots of these drivers have been there ever since the very beginning. These drivers racing with each other week in and week out, sometimes even day in and day out here in the Radical SR10s. So these drivers very comfortable with each other, but sometimes they try and force the issue just a teeny tiny bit, and occasionally it ends in tears.
Yeah, and watching some great dicing here going on between Berger and Gonzaga there, and Berger all over Gonzaga like the plastic on grandma's couch. And in the meantime, got to tip the hat to Kamir Sadura. I told you there was going to be some swapping of positions on that long back straightaway. Kadura managed to move up 2 positions during that slipstream aided run down the back straight, as we watch a move here. And here goes Berger. He wants Gonzaga around the outside. Very iffy spot to make a pass here, but he makes it stick. That hard braking zone down into 3rd gear and dashing down the hill. Berger gets Gonzaga on that downhill section. Really nice work by him. But again, kudos to Samir Kadura, up 3 positions now after making that 2-for-1 pass on the back straight last time around.
Sometimes in life you just have to go for that 2-for-1 deal. If it's a good discount, you gotta bite at it while the opportunity is still available, and that's what these drivers are going to do. 3 wide action going down that back straightaway is not out of character at all. We've seen some drivers go 3 wide at all sorts of different racetracks throughout this past season of the Radical Esports Cup here on Apex Racing TV. We've seen some fantastic races thus far, and this is going to be just the final one from this season. We've got a fantastic season schedule ahead of you for season 4 of 2024. We'll touch on that a little bit later on throughout this broadcast. But as these drivers go through the tight and twisties throughout this lap of the Nordschleife, we have a little bit of a calm before the storm, so to speak, before these drivers turn up the aggression and try and go for some outrageous moves on each other. Certainly wouldn't be out of character with the drivers that we see race in this series. Right now, JR, these drivers may be exercising a teeny tiny bit of patience heading through the twisties.
Whoa, 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 and there's Honegger. What a save and an avoid by Barry, and my goodness, Code Brown there for Honegger. It only cost him miraculously 1 position, although it looks like Reitman may have some momentum on him and to catch him. But yeah, watch Honegger here, and he's got Barry all over him. I mentioned that Barry needed to close that gap in order to take advantage of the slipstream, and gosh, just over rotates under braking a little bit right there. That is a little bit of an iffy spot with some negative camber, but could have been way worse for Honegger. And here comes Reitman taking advantage of Honegger's loss of momentum here. This looks kind of twisty on paper, but this is really a straightaway here. You're flat out running the car through the gears on the approach here to Moot Curve, which is just a couple corners up ahead. And Reitman looks like he has at least for the time being, secured that P6.
Hey, the real question is for now. That's the big thing. These races can change with just the flip of a quarter, really. We've seen these drivers have fantastic races going for them, then just a span of a few moments time, it can end in absolute heartbreak. That was a big snap heading through the corner right before the carousel. This is a wild ride around this racetrack, and these Radical SR10s, a lot of these drivers, they're hanging on for dear life. I joined in the qualifying session earlier, which, as JR pointed out, at the top end of the show. The qualifying session separate from this race broadcast today, but those qualifying times that those drivers were doing and the qualifying laps they were putting in, just riding on board with them was an insane perspective. Them hauling the mail around all the corners around this racetrack is quite frankly awesome to see.
Yeah, it absolutely is, Ron, and this track takes a great deal of precision. You see Vandenherk there taking advantage of one of the few kind of flat exit curbs on this track, but the other curbs are not friends of this Radical. You have to wheel these cars right up to the white line, but if you touch the curb too much, get too high on the curb, it'll lift that splitter up off of the track. You'll lose your arrow as Vandenherk takes the jump there. Great camera work by our producer, Samuli. But yeah, you got to stay off those curbs. You got to get as close to them as possible, but not touch them. And that has caused more than one busted up Radical, and we may see it cause more throughout the course of this one. So we'll keep an eye on those nasty, nasty Nordschleife curbs as we go here.
The killer curbs, the urban plateaus, whatever you want to call them, they beckon around this racetrack like the barriers that line it itself. But these drivers are dealing with the pressure and they're dealing with the pain of hitting those curbs constantly and dealing with the bumps as well. Look at that from Kim-Andre Bjorklund heading his way into the second carousel. He's feeling a whole lot of pressure from Samir Kadora right behind. Kadora, one of the most aggressive drivers in these Radical SR10s, but he is fast, especially around this racetrack. Kim-Andre Bjorklund, the Sim Racing Norway driver running in that number 11 car, he's going to be feeling the burn, he's going to be feeling the pressure, and he's going to be seeing Kadora try and get that move done on him. They're going to be side by side going down this back straightaway. Kadora, this is fairly game set match for the Cuban driver. He will get that move done, but then Bjorklund going to pull in and get that drift, and he's going to go for the back move on him. It's a great showing of the game of leapfrog that these races usually are, and right as Kim-Andre Bjorklund started that straightaway in P2, dropped down to P3, and then he's going to end it in P2. Hey, we said it throughout this broadcast. That's what we expect. Just got put on full display there, JR.
Yeah, absolutely, Ron. And, you know, it's hard when you're behind the wheel, driving a race car, thinking about the pass. When you come onto that back straight, that passing opportunity presents itself immediately. And sometimes a little patience is the better part of valor there. And you saw it unfold perfectly right there. Get the pass done. But that straight is so long that even if you make the pass stick, you're exposed to a pass back there. And Kadura may have pulled the trigger a little early. And we'll keep an eye on this battle next time around and see if he breathes the throttle a little bit and tries to make that move a little bit later. And meanwhile, I mentioned that we needed to see Barry catch up with this train if he was going to make something happen in this race, and he has done that. Looks like Barry has got about a half second ahead of him to Kjetil Larsen. So that is the battle for fourth position, as Larson currently running in fourth. So we'll keep an eye on those two as well the next time we get on that long straightaway.
And Barry is always a force to be reckoned with in these Radical SR10 races. He is insanely quick, and Kadora has an insane run to get his way past Kim-Andre Bjorklund, heading down the hill, about to start the twisties throughout this lap, but Kadora finally getting that move done. However, this is both a blessing and a curse, because he's going to be in the P2 spot for probably the rest of this lap. Actually, not the rest of this lap, for most of the rest of the lap. Then they go into that back straightaway, and he's going to lose out on that P2 spot. But as these drivers are starting to battle, Philip Vandenhurk is just entirely checked out. 7 seconds in front of this man, Samir Kadora. That is an insane gap that he's built up so far in this race. And he's a Radical veteran too. We haven't seen too much of him thus far in this season. Of course, came in halfway through the season, mind you, but still, I don't think we've seen him at all throughout the races that I have covered. But Philip Vandenhurk, I remember calling races with him about a year ago. He is a force to be reckoned with in these Radical SR10s, always quick. However, if I remember correctly, he tended to make some couple of mistakes here and there. I remember a race at Spa. I forget what season it was. It was certainly last year, though, and Philip Vandenhurk had 2 very costly mistakes that cost him out on a good position, but those inconsistency woes have just washed away. The driver of the number 1 car running in P1 is putting on a number 1 performance right now, still extending that gap to 7.2 seconds. And here at this racetrack, you know, Spa's a difficult track, do not get me wrong. 4 miles, a little click over 4 miles Spa is, and however many corners it is around that track. That's a menacing track as is, but you don't get much more challenging than the Nordschleife. So for Philip Vandenhurk to as we have a spinner, that's Matheson.
Yeah, Matheson causing some more damage to that Radical in his race. Definitely not going the way he wanted. That is our pole sitter, and he's currently down 10 positions running in P12. But yeah, going back to Philip Vandenhurk, he is an absolute alien run, and I'm looking at my timing tower. He has put down a 6:18.72, and that is all alone in clean air without the benefit of the draft, as Matheson got some heat in those tires on the last spin. Or no, that was a replay, sorry. Matheson roasting those rear tires. It takes him a little while to come back. And meanwhile, it looks like Barry has snuck past Larson. So Barry up in P4. And now we're looking at Honegger with Reitnen behind. Reitnen wants a piece of Honegger, as Honegger got a pretty decent start, but has been dropping as this one has unfolded.
So I think, harkening my mind back to the point I was going to make before that spin from Matheson heading through the middle section of this lap, the fact that Philip Van den Herk has been as consistent and mistake-free as he has so far in this race is very impressive. Spa, very challenging track, but nothing gets as challenging as the Green Hell itself. 14.17 miles and a beautiful 154 turns. So a very simple track, the Green Hell is. So the fact he's put together as good of a race as he has and as clean of a race as he has really speaks volumes about the driver that Philip Van den Herk is, now extending that gap to 8 seconds over himself and Samir Kadora, who I think is going to be feeling some pressure from Kim-Andre Bjorklund in just a couple of moments time. They'll be coming up to that back straightaway in just a few moments time, and when that happens, are we going to see a very similar game of leapfrog to what we saw just one lap ago, JR? Are we going to start that straightaway with Kadora in the lead, then Bjorklund's going to take it, then Kadora's going to retake it, or do you think we're going to have something, a curveball thrown our way?
Yeah, well, you know, it's all about experimentation, Ron. And I think if I was Bjorklund this time, I might breathe the throttle a little bit as you see Bjorklund 4 wheels off the track there. The only place on the iRacing service where this high downforce car, well over 100 miles an hour, will get launched like that. That was awesome camera work. But Bjorklund may want to breathe the throttle a little bit as he comes onto the back straight and start initiating that pass about halfway down, so he's not exposed to getting passed right back, because once you get that pass done, that slipstream is available to the competitor right behind you. So we'll ride along here with Bjorklund. He's looking forward at Kadura. That gap is now down to about 0.4, and here you got to hammer this exit full power right here, and got to get it just right to put the power down as early as possible. Yeah, you see Bjorklund, he's going to pull out of the draft here and bide his time. When we get about halfway down the straightaway, he'll get back behind Kadura and put that slipstream to work. And yeah, this is the approach that I was thinking, and watch that gap now dropping 0.3 now, still going down, and looks like Bjorklund has timed it pretty well. I think he's going to have the pass done by the entry to that last set of corners at the end of the lap.
Under the Bill Stein Bridge, though, he went side by side through there. Is Kadora going to hold off the challenge from Kim-Andre Bjorklund, or is Bjorklund going to get the move done there side by side for a whole lot of time, a lot longer than I was expecting them to be, but Bjorklund got that move done to slip his way up into P2. However, we may see Kadora go for a move like he did only one lap ago, but speaking of one lap, we have one more lap to go here for Philip Van den Herk. He is just entirely checked out in this race. 8.2 seconds in front of Kim-Andre Bjorklund in P2, and that gap will very likely increase between now and the checkered flag, not only because this number one Radical is just on rails. The Bjorklund and Kadora fight is really intense, and I have a feeling that we may see those two drivers come to blows. We've seen it happen before at the end of these Radical SR10 races at the Nordschleife, JR. We could see a little bit of deja vu, and for all we know, we could see the likes of season champion James Berry end up in the second spot. He's not terribly far off, neither is Kendall Larson in P5, so this could be not a two-car fight. This may very well end up being a four-car battle to the checkered flag. I certainly wouldn't rule it out. What about you?
Yeah, too right, Ron. And if you're taking notes at home, at 20 minutes and 50 seconds into this one, Ron issued the commentator's curse. We haven't seen any cars coming together coming off that back straight yet, but we are in crunch time. The adrenaline is flowing, and there goes Kadora around Bjorklund. That section of the track getting a lot of work here this afternoon, and a good job taking advantage of that long, flat-out section. It doesn't look like a straight-on paper, but it functionally is one as you're running these radicals through the gears. And now it is a little peak on the inside. Bjorklund showing his nose. That gap is pretty small. It's about 0.3 of a second. And Bjorklund in the catbird seat. If he can hang on here and maintain that gap, he's going to be in a good position to make the same pass that he made on the last lap. And meanwhile, Van den Herk gone. 8.6 second gap between him and Kadura. And not that he needed good fortune, Ron, but I got to say that little kerfuffle in the first couple of corners at the start of the race just kind of handed it to Van den Herk as the other couple of fastest guys on the track went up in a cloud of radical parts, dust and smoke. So Van den Herk kind of had an easy run about this time.
I mean, it's very odd for us to say that he had an easy run of things around this track. 154 corners for 4 laps. I'm not sure exactly how that would total out, but still, it definitely wasn't easy for Philip Vandenherk. However, it would have been much harder if that incident didn't happen. It would have been really exciting to see John McHutchinson involved in that fight. He was fast in the qualifying session, fast in practice, and he's always been fast around this track. I remember a couple seasons ago, John McHutchinson was in contention. I believe actually won one of these Friday 2100 GMT broadcasted race here on Apex Racing TV, so it would have been nice to see him involved in that fight, but sadly with that opening lap Shamazel, it just wasn't meant to be. Herc, meanwhile, he is still pulling that gap over Cadora. And talking about this Cadora and Bjorklund fight, we saw Bjorklund be a little bit racy not terribly long ago. We may see him get a bit more racy now. You can see him pulling out of the slipstream and maybe trying to go into the grass. I don't think so, Kim Andre Bjorklund. That would have been an incredibly aggressive maneuver if he tried to do that. I don't think it's a maneuver that would suit him well at all, which is part of the reason why I think Kim Andre Bjorklund let him by when Cadora got that pass done on this lap. It looked like Bjorklund really just pulled over to the side of the track, broke very early, and let Cadora go by. I think he's setting himself up very well for that back straight run for the final time in this race. Kim Andre Bjorklund, he's going to be in the advantageous position. He's going to be in the drafts, and that's really all that matters towards the end of these Nordschleife races, just having that air being broken up in front of you, as Bjorklund having a bad run coming out of the carousel. They're losing a little bit of time. If there's probably 1 or 2 more laps left to go in this race, I would really start to consider Barry and Larson being a factor in this fight. However, I just think it's too little too late unless there is some sort of drama between these two. Both of their cars are running terribly, as Cadora then ran very wide there just a couple of corners ago. These two, they're setting themselves up for a grandstand finish. They're going to be battling hard, no doubt about it.
Yeah, too right, Ron. And Cadora right now, you can see him both flogging these radicals. Cadora really desperately trying to open up that gap. Like I said, you got to get it 0.8, 0.9, or even 1 second to be safe from the slipstream. And Cadora so far unable to get it done. My timing tower is showing about 0.55 seconds back from Cadora to Bjorklund, and they're both sitting on the podium right now. So, you know, you don't want to roll the dice too much and throw away that podium finish. But, you know, as Ron pointed out, these guys know each other well. They race together, practice together. They've had a great long season together. And to tell them to take a breath, take it easy, don't worry about P2 versus P3 is probably wasted breath at this point.
Yeah, at this point in time, it is really starting to heat up between these two. The rest of the world is fading away. They're only focused on each other, and they're focused on trying to get that P2 spot. They're separated by a little bit. There's actually a bigger gap than we've seen so far in this race, but Cadora and Bjorklund, they're going to be setting ourselves up for a fantastic finish here on Apex Racing TV. Bjorklund really needs to have a good run out of this corner. Pulling out of the draft, I'm not sure if that's a smart move, though, because you can see that gap is much bigger than it was just 1 lap ago. I'm curious if Bjorklund is even going to be close enough to try and get that move done on Cadora.
Yeah, he showed pretty good timing last time, Ron, and it's looking okay. Cadora is going to make him pick sides there. Bjorklund's going to take the outside and now cover the inside going to that right-hander at the end of this lap. But Cadora has still got some speed here. He's still making that slipstream work for him. You see a little wee from Bjorklund side by side now. And can Cadora get around and slam the door? He does it. Oh my goodness. Bjorklund showing his nose there into the second to last corner to try to throw his competitor off. But Cadora showing some great stuff there. It really looked like Bjorklund had that timing right. But my goodness, what a move at the end there by Samir Cadora. Great stuff. And meanwhile, up front, there is Philip Vandenherk celebrating his dominant run by roasting the tires off the back of his radical. And my goodness, for Philip Vandenherk, this race never in doubt, Ron.
Oh, absolutely not. Ever since he took that green flag, it's been, I wouldn't say game, set, match. There was probably about 25 seconds at the very beginning of this race where it wasn't set in stone, but after that he just started to pull away, put his nose to the grindstone, and put on a dominating performance. The same can't be said about this man, Dennis Kyriakopoulos, running the air conditioning mod in this Radical SR10. He's currently running down in 12th. A little bit of a mirror image. Oh yeah, you can see Heinz Braun there in the back, a shot with the other air conditioning package in these Radical SR10s. Some added ventilation, which I don't even think is needed because the iRacing weather conditions were actually pretty nice for this broadcast, but still a little bit of added ventilation, more of a comfortable ride for these drivers finishing outside the top 10. But yeah, Philip Vandenhark just absolutely dominated this race from start to finish. Of course, had a little bit of luck on his side with that drama that went down heading into turn number 1, and another car with the air conditioning mod. I feel like this is coming a bit more common here with these races. These drivers getting a little bit of overheating problems. Usually with some sim racers, it's mainly computer overheating, not their own overheating. So, we're seeing some very interesting interpretations of aerodynamic regulations at the end of this race, JR.
Well, I'll tell you what, Ron, those race suits can get a little hot, and these drivers, as they work their way through the world-famous green hell, those stones can get a little warm, so it can be good to have some extra cooling in the seat there. And my goodness, we're still waiting for cars to finish. You're watching the P15 car here of Peter Adrian, and Andreas Friedrich is still back behind him, I believe. And you see there on our timing tower, McCutcheon, Anderson, and Gordon Hauge all binned it at the beginning. And somehow Matheson, after treating his Radical like a pinball in between these barriers, still managed to almost scratch his way back to the top 10. Kyriakopoulos, I think, had an off that put him in the back, as did Braun. So messy race. You can get messy races here at the Nordschleife, but I'll tell you, we had 50 cars signed up for this one, Ron. This was the top split, and there are some high I ratings here. There are a number of drivers here who are in the season top 10 as we round out 2024 season 3. So I was not expecting such a sloppy beginning to this one with the caliber of drivers that we have.
Well, I mean, in fairness, these drivers have put on a fantastic season, so for them to have some incidents towards the very beginning, you can't really fault them too much. And considering some of my experience in some of these Radical official races, they are leagues quicker than me, so I feel like I don't have too much room to judge. I'll tell you what, JR, ever since I started with this series back in March of 2023, I've had a pretty good record of not annoying many drivers, so I'm going to try and keep that record clean. And I'll just say that, hey, it's racing. These drivers going to push it to the absolute limit. It happens from time to time. But you mentioned a very good point there. It was a whole lot of drivers registered for this race, and that's one good thing about this series and the evolution that the SR10s have had on iRacing in the past year and a half. When I first started with the series, we were lucky to get about 10 to 12 cars for only one split with these 2100 GMT broadcasts, and ever since then these cars have just skyrocketed in popularity. iRacing has done a brilliant job to get these cars handling. When I first started broadcasting these races, they kind of handled like a trash bag full of mango pulp, but they worked on these cars and hey, it made them drive like a dream. JR, you've said so many times at the start of these broadcasts, mastery of these cars can make you better in anything. These cars are absolutely awesome, and even though some may deride the Ford EcoBoost engine that they have, they also sound pretty good as well. So the SR10s, it's really been nice to see over the past year and a half the wonderful changes that have been made to this car to make it a spectacle in the world of iRacing, and a spectacle here on Apex Racing TV week in and week out. Of course, with week 13 coming up in only 1 week's time, considering we're in week 12, you can do the math there. It's going to be only 2 weeks' time until Season 4 starts up here on Apex. These Friday broadcasts going to remain, and we've got a fantastic schedule of races there. So with one more driver waiting to cross the line, JR, you want to quickly run through the schedule that we have for Season 4 of 2024?
Yeah, let's take a look at that real quick. And some fantastic tracks. We've had some really good experiences at some tracks, so we've had some repeat customers. But you know, some of these hilly kind of medium to high speed tracks with a lot of elevation change, blind corners, and are really super well suited to these cars. Of course, built and developed in the UK. But just to run through that with you quickly, we have the season will open at Brands Hatch, fantastic UK circuit, and follow that up with Oulton Park, no chicane version of Oulton Park, another fantastic British circuit through the rolling hills. Then we'll have Spa. We'll head over to Zandvoort, which will be a total blast in these cars. The Nürburgring Nordschleife Green Hell will be in week 5 instead of the finale next season. Then we'll have Circuito de Navarra, which I am actually not familiar with. I'll have to look that one up and maybe to go for a spin. Algarve, another relatively new track on iRacing, an absolute blast. Now back to the UK, Donington Park, another classic. Watkins Glen, VIR is going to be fantastic in these cars. Road America, Sebring, and week 13, because the final season will have 13 weeks instead of 12, is going to be at Interlagos. So really a fantastic schedule. And folks, I really encourage you to participate with us here on our Friday 2100 GMT broadcast. Get one of these cars, get some laps down, show up, sign up, and if you make the top split, you can join this great radical community and join us here on Apex Racing TV. And there are our final results. Ryan, why don't you run through those with the folks, and we'll get this wrapped up.
Alrighty, sounds good, man. And Philip Vanden Herk takes the checkered flag. He was also the driver that won the first ever Radical official broadcast I did here on Apex Racing TV. So very fitting that he takes the checkered flag today. Samir Kador from Cuba going to finish this race in P2, locked steady in a very close fight all throughout it between himself and Kim Andre Bukeland. Those two drivers round at your podium. That's going to be the series champion, who we may have a chat with in a couple of moments. I'm James Berry finishing in 4th. Kettle Larson going to finish in 6th. Marco Honor are going to be finishing this race in P6. Sally Reitinen ends up in 7th. Gabriel Berger ends up in P8. Jorge Gonzaga going to finish this race in P9. That's going to be Paolo Macha rounding out your top 10. Matheson, the driver who impressed 1 week ago, he runs into some troubles here at the Nordschleife, ends up in P11. Dennis Kyriakopoulos going to be finishing this race in 12th. Heinz Braun in 13th. Christopher Carlson in P14. Peter Adrian, Andres Friedrich, John McCutcheon, and Leah Anderson all running into some major drama throughout this race, with Friedrich, McCutcheon, and Anderson not finishing this race on the lead lap, and Adrian finishing about 5 minutes behind our race winner. And of course, Gordon Haug, the Sim Racing Norway driver, going to round out the 19 cars that took the start in this race. And those are your results from the final race of Season 3 in 2024. Now, JR, we got James Berry, the season champ, waiting in the interview waiting area. Would you like to have a chat with the champion?
Yeah, we will go ahead and bring in James Berry, your season champion for 2024 Season 3. James, kind of slumming it a little bit back there in P4. Looks like you were able to move up 1 from your qualifying position, and what a mess at the beginning. Everything happened there so quickly. I'm not sure I even caught everything that went on. So what was that opening couple corner kerfuffle look like from your perspective?
Yeah, it was pretty scary. So we had my teammate Andreas, for once, I think his insane start procedure got the better of him for once, and he went for a gap that wasn't really there on Sveinung, and yeah, that caused the chain reaction. And then I had to duck around the outside, which I'm glad I did, because if I went either way I would have crashed straight into them both. And then I found myself down, I don't know, P10 or so, or I don't know, P8 maybe. Then yeah, just making my way forward whilst hoping that the guys in front would hold on to P2, because there was Kim Andre in P2, and I was just making my way through the field and just hoping that they would go and hold on so I could leapfrog my way to the front of that pack. And we got most of the way there, so it was good fun.
Yeah, great recovery drive. And now that the season is concluded, you have absolutely dominated the points here this time for a repeat championship here in the Radical Esports Cup. So we went through the schedule a couple minutes ago while we were wrapping up the race. Looks like a fantastic one. And why don't you let your fans out there know whether or not we're going to be seeing James Berry participating next season.
Yeah, of course, as you say, yeah, the schedule looks pretty damn good for next season. Some new tracks I haven't done, it's like Navarra and Portimao, and I think one other that I can't remember. So it's going to be interesting, and there's maybe one or two faster drivers who have started driving recently who can maybe offer more competition at the front, and obviously these broadcast races tend to be pretty competitive anyway. So it'll be good fun, yeah. I think we'll have a really good time.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear. Yeah, and the schedule looks great. I think the one I'm looking forward to is Algarve. I think these cars are going to be an absolute riot on that track. A lot of difficult stuff, off camber, kind of weird blind corners through that hilly countryside. So definitely looking well forward to that. So, well, thank you so much for coming by and speaking with us, James. Looked like you were alone in the interview room, so we appreciate your insights, as we always do. As we wrap up here, is there anyone you would like to thank or give a shout out to today?
Yeah, shout out as always to my teammates, George, Andreas, and Myron. And I have it on good authority that one of your team members has been getting married this weekend. So shout out to Joshua.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, that is very kind of you, and I'm sure that Josh appreciates that, and we'll make sure that gets passed on to him. He may be a little bit busy today, but all right, James Berry. Well, you are the champion once again. We're looking forward to seeing you tackle this series again in 2024, Season 4. So we'll see you at Brands Hatch in 2 weeks.
Yep, see you there.
All right, cheers.
For the season, bye.
All right. Well, that is about going to wrap it up for us here today. But don't forget, folks, we are not just about these fantastic radicals here on Apex Racing TV. We have got your long weekend covered. Monday, why don't you join us for the premiere of a brand new series, the Simware.eu Porsche Cup Benelux 2024. We'll start round 1 at Zandvoort. That's going to be a great one. Cup cars eat up that track, and it's going to be nonstop action. And Tuesday, we'll see the return of the Operation E-Motorsport iRacing League round 2 at Road America. So be sure and subscribe, like, and hit that notification icon here for Apex Racing TV so that you don't miss any of the action. And on behalf of Ron, Sam, and our absent groom, Joshua Wilkie, thank you so much for joining us. Have a fantastic Friday and an even better weekend.